everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What the Forensics. My name is Nicole, I'll be your MC today, and I am joined here again by the lovely Rebecca and Journey. For this episode, Journey is going to be telling us all about the Illuminati, or all of, but what we know, I guess, of the Illuminati and what the internet has to say. But before we begin, if you could leave us reviews and or comments, that would be greatly appreciated. Helps us out to make sure that your apps are auto-downloading as well, since we can only see downloads and not listens. And to like, subscribe, and follow wherever you can. We're on almost all slash most major streaming sites or services. So just to stay up to date, we're also on social media, and that would be phenomenal. I would also like to note that this is a largely unknown subject matter. Journey did her best to research the best information that she could find. However, we still suggest taking everything, if not most of what we say or talk about, with a grain of salt in terms of like factual evidence. There's going to be some conspiracies thrown around, I think, and some ideas and conversation about it, but it's not a very set in stone subject, and we're not a part of the Illuminati, so we don't have like firsthand account to tell you any of this information. So keep that in mind. With that out of the way, Journey, would you like to tell us all about what you found? I'm very excited.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad. I was really excited when I started researching this case, and then about 4 hours in, I was like, "Wow, my brain hurts." Um, because literally, as soon as you put Illuminati in the search bar, you get some very interesting results, and it's very difficult to separate out the facts and what every person considers fact
Yeah,
varies greatly among the
yeah.
Illuminati platforms. So, like Nicole said, please take this with a grain of salt. I really try my best to find the most accurate information, but it's definitely not perfect. And if you feel like you need to, I would also encourage you to go and read my sources and decide for yourself what you believe slash trust. Many people believe many different things. This is more or less what I'm choosing to believe about the Illuminati. So, the term Illuminati has actually been used throughout history and has been adopted by various groups, not just the one like I feel like we kind of think of.
Mhm.
And so, the word Illuminati is the plural of the Latin word illuminatus or illuminatus, which means revealed and or enlightened. So, as you would assume, a lot of the groups who use the term Illuminati claim to be enlightened in some sense or another.
Mia, she's quite enlightened.
She's quite enlightened.
She's agreeing.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's like, facts. Um,
The one fact that we have of this episode is
literally is what the
definition.
word means. And so a lot of these groups appeared in or around the period of Enlightenment where ideas concerning God, reason, nature, and humanity were sort of being combined into new worldviews. And as a result, we saw revolutionary developments in art, philosophy, and politics, specifically with the use of reason and fact based inquiry into or to improve society. So we're kind of switching from a purely religious based worldview to more of a science, fact, reason, logic based worldview, which is very difficult for churches to accept.
Mhm.
Now that I've said that, the first group of the Illuminati actually occurred a little bit before the period of Enlightenment. And so this group was based in Spain in the late 15th to 16th centuries, and they were called the Alumbrados or the Enlightened Ones.
Hmm.
And so they believed that the human soul was permitted a vision of the divine and would have direct communication with the Holy Spirit once it attained a certain degree of perfection. And so once you received this quote unquote light, your soul would neither advance nor regress. So you were like sat in this perfection.
Hmm.
So because you were already perfect, you didn't need to participate in any exterior form of religious life. And it was impossible for you to commit a sin. So basically, you could do anything without worrying how it would impact your soul and whether you're going to go to heaven or hell.
That seems like a title that everyone would love to just claim. And then they say, well, free, clean slate. I can do what I want.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I
right. Like
don't,
it just seems like an easy way out.
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't really know the steps to achieving this perfection.
Hmm.
Just like you just went about your life until the Holy Spirit decided to communicate with you, and then you realized that you were perfect.
Mm. Mhm.
Perfect. I can never do no wrong.
No wrong, no
No wrong in
sin,
God's
nothing.
eyes.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting what they're like, you wouldn't be able to commit a sin so you can like give into any of your like sexual impulses specifically.
Hmm.
And I was like, is that the only sin that they're considering? Because there's many other sins that
There's
are
many
far
There's a lot of
greater.
sins out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But you can have sex. So that's great.
So, good for them.
Yes. Very excited.
Always trying to find an out when it comes to sex and religion. All it
Exactly.
seems.
Yes. And so, interestingly, many of the leaders and members were actually tried for heresy by the Inquisition. And so, it actually even sounded like a lot of these charges just weren't really warranted. It kind of sounded like the Inquisition didn't like this group and they were like, we're just going to say you're heretics because we don't like what you believe or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't really know. There was not a lot of information on this group.
Makes sense.
Another group was the Rosicrucians, who claimed to have been founded in 1422 but gained public notice in 1537. They claimed to possess secret wisdom that had been handed down to them from ancient times, thus being quote unquote enlightened. They had published a book titled Fama Fraternatis, I think, Fraternitatis, I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, which recounts the journey of their founder, Christian Rosenkreutz, to Damascus, Damcar, Egypt, and Fez, where he came into possession of the secret wisdom. And so when he then returned to Germany, he chose 3 other people who he shared this wisdom with and started this order. And then later, for some reason, he increased the number of people who knew the secret wisdom to 8. They all moved to a different country to spread out this wisdom so that, like, all 8 people weren't in one spot so they could all be easily gotten rid of, in my assumption. They all agreed that this brotherhood should be kept a secret for 100 years. And then after 120 years, they found the tomb of the founder. And in that tomb, they found documents and symbols that were held in very high esteem among this order. And then once they recovered what was in the tomb, the members again moved to different countries, dispersed completely, and the location of the tomb was just forgotten. So we actually don't know where this tomb is anymore.
Hmm.
Or I guess you could say
Mysterious.
whether or not it existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's what they want you to believe.
Exactly. So some of their ideas actually have survived through Freemasonry. You'll learn that Freemasons and the Illuminati are very heavily intertwined. And I'll express my opinion on that later. So, this order, specifically the Rosicrucians, was largely forgotten in the 18th century, but it was revived in the 19th and 20th centuries in Europe and North America, and I believe they're still active today, which is interesting. I don't really know to what capacity they're active, but I do believe they are still active in whatever sense that
Yeah.
means. But yes, and so now the group that was most closely associated with the name Illuminati was one actually started in Bavaria, Germany. So this group was founded by Adam Weishaupt on May 1st, 1776. Adam Weishaupt was a professor of canon law at the University of Ingolstadt in Bavaria. He was only 22 when he was hired as a professor, which is impressive.
Impressive.
Yeah, he was educated, ambitious, loved a good mystery, and wanted to start a philosophical political group, according to my understanding. It's also very important to note, and a lot of sources left this out or didn't expand on this, but canon law is the body of laws that were developed within Christianity and govern the internal hierarchy and administration of the church. It's not law that we think of today.
It's not like criminal or anything like that.
Yeah, and I found some sources that were just like, he was a professor of law. And I was like, you're missing
A crucial
a
point there.
crucial part of this.
Yeah.
But yes, so there are many different theories about what his goal was with this group, depending on the source you read. The Encyclopedia Britannica said that his goal was to replace Christianity with a religion of reason. Another theory was that his hope was to establish this group to direct a worldwide attack on religion and monarchy and hopefully eventually rule the world, according to an article posted in the New American.
Hmm.
And Wikipedia states that their goals were to oppose superstition, obscurantism, religious influence over public life, and abuses of state power. So take from that what you will. And apparently, his original name for the group was the Covenant of Perfectibility, and they went by the Perfectibilists, which was a fun word to spell. And
Yeah,
so
that sounds fun.
right? It's a lot less ominous than the word Illuminati,
Yeah.
but I think Illuminati is only ominous now because of
What
what
we've
we associate it
associated.
with.
Yeah.
And so he did end up changing the name in April 1778, 2 years after it was started, to the Order of the Illuminati. And supposedly another strong contender for the name was the name Bee Order, like
The
Bumblebee.
bumblebee.
I don't know how true that
Interesting.
is. I don't know where that name came from. I think it's hilarious. And so when people joined, they were allegedly told that the goal of the order was to make all of mankind one happy and prosperous family, which aligned with their Christian values.
This feels like it could have some very not great undertones to it in terms
Yeah.
of like making everyone the same, making everyone happy. Like, yes, everyone happy and prosperous, great. But
Yeah.
one big family can get a little dangerous at times, I'd say.
Exactly. And I also don't know how true that is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't really know what they were told to join the order. The article that I got that from, the further I read into it, I realized, oh, this isn't the best source for this. um, but I figured I would include that anyways, just to kind of, in
I
case it
feel
was
like
true.
there's
I don't know.
no one great source to cover
Yeah.
this, though. You got to kind of pull from a bunch of different things and
Yeah.
Yeah,
come
the
up with your
Illuminati is
own.
definitely not the most straightforward thing to research.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
weird because you have people who like so wholeheartedly believe that it's true,
Yeah.
and people
Mhm.
who so wholeheartedly believe that it is not true.
Yeah.
And there's so much overlap, and you don't know what's going on.
And like
Yeah.
without knowing, because I only briefly really know what the Illuminati is and just of it. So before we like go into what they stand for and what they do and some things that they're associated with, though, like you would think the Illuminati may just be another group. Like sometimes
Hmm.
there are like secretive groups that not everyone knows about. So it's possible that sure they still
Exactly.
exist or they're still active, but again, like to what capacity and what do they actually stand for and whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's very interesting because it started so long ago
Hmm.
that no one really knows.
I think that in and of itself, just anything in history, when it starts so far long ago, there's always that piece of mysteriousness added to it and like the unknown because we can't tangibly see or go back that far ourselves. So we're going off the
Yeah,
word of a lot of different generations before us.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and then conspiracies started about this group in like 1789.
Oh, so they've
So
been
like
going.
there's been conspiracies from day one. So
Wow.
even the
Dang.
beginning information is convoluted, and so it's just like it's so frustrating. But either way, so this society was organized into 5 degrees, which had a number of classes within those degrees. I have it on the next slide. I'll explain it more. The information gets a little iffy, but as far as I know, the classes and degrees are correct, but what they are quote unquote told at certain levels is what I'm unsure of.
Mm, okay.
A quote I saw on Reddit about the Illuminati, because that's a reliable source or whatever. Um,
I love Reddit.
they were just talking about how this was a secret society because they're working against like common views at the time. So they would have to be
Mm,
discreet and secret because their ideas like vehemently opposed the common accepted ideas at the time. And so I thought that was kind
interesting.
of important to keep in mind. And it's less of like a satanic secret society and more of
Yeah.
like a we're gonna get tried for treason if this comes out
Yeah.
secret society.
Well, you even
Um,
think nowadays, like with the LGBTQ plus society, like communities and
Mhm.
like women's communities, like a lot is going back underground to
Yeah.
sort shit out and then to come back on top, like to do
Yeah.
something about it.
It's I didn't touch on too much of the nowadays stuff
Yeah.
because it felt a little too real,
Yeah. A little too. Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
too close to home. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm
That's
just gonna
fair.
pretend it's in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yes. So the degrees slash levels slash classes of Illuminati. So the first degree is nursery. And within the nursery degree, you have the preparation class, the novice class, the Minerval class, and the Illuminatus minor class. And according to, yeah,
I just this is so unrelated, but this is where my brain goes. The Minerval class. Do you think there's a connection to Harry Potter and Minerva, the one character, and her?
no. Well,
Okay.
yes and no, because the symbol of this Illuminati was the owl of Minerva. So that's where I'm assuming
Oh,
Minerval comes from.
gotcha. Oh,
And then
cool.
I'm also imagine that the Owl of Minerva influenced maybe Minerva the character, but I
Yeah,
also
yeah,
wonder
yeah.
if Minerva's a common name in the UK.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes and no,
That
maybe.
could make more sense than ties to the Illuminati. I'll give
Who
you a
knows?
point for that one.
There's got to be a conspiracy.
Is Harry
with J.K. Rowling.
Potter in the Illuminati?
Yeah, we could start that one.
Uh,
Um, and so, according to one source, when they reached this Illuminatus minor level, they were told that the power that was held by the religious and governmental institutions was the only obstruction to their goal of universal happiness. Therefore, the leaders of those institutions needed to be brought under control of the order or destroyed. Now, I want to say when you're reading sources and you're deciding whether or not they are trustworthy,
oh
listen to the
man.
words they use.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's a bit
a lot of
extreme.
credible sources don't use they need to be brought under control or destroyed. So just like
They
think about
want,
that.
yeah. It's like indoctrination or death at this point,
Exactly.
how they're saying it.
So just like, yeah, when you're reading sources, read a couple and then compare the language that they use.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in this case, it is
Okay.
wild. So the second degree is symbolic masonry. And so there was apprentice, fellowcraft, and master mason, which I believe are almost identical to like the mason levels. And I know that Adam Weishaupt was very heavily influenced by the masons. One source said that he actually tried to join the masons, but they didn't allow for any of his ideas. So he wanted to start his own, but took a lot of the ideas of the Freemasons with him, kind of.
Okay.
And then we have the third degree is Scotch Masonry with Illuminatus Major or Scotch Novice, and Illuminatus Dirigens or Scotch Knight. Allegedly, at this major level, they were told the actual goal was ruling the world after destroying all existing governments and religions. So, again, very extreme. And so they would then supposedly take this oath, which bound their every thought, action, and fate to this administration of like their superiors in the order. So, like, every thought, breath, action was for the order. They had to live as the order directed, which is not dissimilar from religion, but it's again phrased very extreme.
Yeah, the extremity to it all.
Yes. So
Did
then
did they have like a plan after all existing governments and religions were going to hopefully be destroyed? Or they just like that was the goal and then they were gonna take over after?
I'm not sure because I don't fully believe that that was the goal of this order.
Because like I can understand them maybe having like reforms in place to change the existing governments and religions, but like the
Mhm.
whole just getting rid of and destroying is like where do you go from there? Like
Yeah.
that can't be the end goal. There's got to be something beyond that.
Yeah. And that I'm not sure. There are a lot of
Hmm.
conspiracies, specifically the New World Order conspiracy that
Mm.
I talk about a little later on, that kind of offers an explanation after you get
Okay.
rid of all the governments and religions. But basically, my understanding is that they weren't happy with what was happening, so they were going to like their ideas were better. So they were
Right.
going to get rid of everything. They were going to have one order or whatever.
Yeah.
It was going to be them, and their rules would be instituted, I think.
Okay.
I don't know.
We love a power grab.
I don't
Like,
know.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, I really don't know. It was
No,
quite
but it's
frustrating.
fascinating because, like, even after all of the research too, and like finding what we can, there's still so many questions. Like,
Right?
you can't know everything to it all. Yeah.
And a spoiler, they did recover some of their like inner correspondence,
Ooh.
but I can't read German and I'm not
Ah.
in Germany. But I feel like if you go to Germany, you can read the book that he's written about the Illuminati. And so,
Hmm.
like, there is real factual information on this. You just have to go to Germany and you have to read German.
Yeah. That's fair.
So,
Is it on a like any website at all? I learned Google Translate has a website translate option now.
oh,
So
I
you just throw
didn't
in.
really look. They didn't
Okay.
really, they were like, there's some of his information like buried deep in the German archives kind of thing in Ingolstadt.
Oh. Any of our listeners,
So, yeah, if we have any listeners, please
you can
go
speak
and send us
German.
pictures.
Please let
Yeah.
us know.
So that's getting a bit later in this
Sorry.
episode.
Yes.
That's
We'll
okay.
bring it back. We'll bring it back. I'm getting ahead of myself.
So the fourth degree is called the Lesser Mysteries. I did find a source that talked about the actual like initiations into these two degrees, like the lesser and the greater mysteries, I think.
And these are like
But
we're moving up the hierarchy at this point, correct?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I'm not going to go into the initiation right into these degrees, mostly because I don't know how true they are, and they were quite in depth. So they're in our source list if you want to read them, though. And so the two classes of lesser mystery is epopt or priest, and then prince or regent. And then we have the fifth degree, which are called the greater mysteries. And so that's where you can be a magus or a philosopher or a rex king, homroy, or areopagite. I don't know.
They love
So
titles. They love titles.
they
Oh my
love
gosh.
titles. And they also talked in pseudonyms. So, yeah. So, like, Adam was Rex of this whole thing. And so then everyone was like below him at these certain
Yeah.
levels.
Yeah.
And then supposedly, when they're in the nursery or mason degrees, the candidate is tried and prepared for the mystery degrees. If they are found unreliable, then they will not be allowed to advance. However, if they were allowed to advance, then everything they had been taught up to then was overthrown and more radical and deistic theories and plans were shared, supposedly.
How do
So,
you
kind
test
of
that?
like, pardon?
How do you test that? Like, how do you know how I mean, I'm not that I'm exactly. This is just me thinking out loud. But like
Yeah.
if they're found unreliable, what is your plan to prove that they're unreliable or reliable to make that determination?
I think it's like you give everyone a similar but different piece of information, and then you
See
kind
how
of
that
like,
spreads?
yeah. And then if it does spread, you know they're unreliable because it's only a certain piece of information. Like, it's a very common way for
Mm.
finding out traitors,
Oh, okay.
because if they're like, oh, so and so is allergic to penicillin, so and so is allergic to mushrooms, so and so is allergic to gluten, and then someone tries to kill you with gluten, you know that the person you told that you were allergic to gluten, like, is the traitor.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never thought of that.
Yeah.
That's genius.
Right? It's
May
very
have
cool.
some flaws, but pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And it also is made easier by the fact that he had supposedly set up a spy network within this
Oh,
order.
okay. You do
So,
actually know then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were all kind of spying on each other
Okay.
because
Okay.
he was supposedly very suspicious, which I think is fair because you are a secret order that goes
Yeah.
against ideas. You could be tried for treason, like XYZ, whatever.
So funny. Okay.
So if supposedly, if anyone tried to inform the authorities about the order and its true objectives, they would be killed. Um, this secret police was known as the Insinuating Brethren, and one source said that its logo was an all-seeing eye. I question that.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that there was like this network of spies to keep everyone in line. That feels reasonable, but I have trouble believing they were killed for like talking about it. But I don't know the customs that were acceptable back then.
Are we still in like the late 1700s at this point then?
Yes,
Okay. Okay. Okay.
yeah,
So I was like,
we're like
okay.
1776 to 1785.
Okay. That makes sense.
And I'm also suspicious of their logo of this brethren being the all-seeing eye, but like I guess it could have been
Maybe not
because
to the
it's a
same degree as what we know of the all seeing eye now, but some
yeah,
variation of it.
yeah.
Because I think the all
Um,
seeing eye is a prominent icon throughout history, just in different uses and whatever facets, you know?
yeah. And I do talk about that later on
Okay.
as well. But yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, the Bavarian Illuminati's logo was the Owl of Minerva, which is interesting because when you Google logo of the Bavarian Illuminati, the second link is to a Getty Images site where you can buy a picture of the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States, which is like the triangle with the eye. And it's labeled as the logo of the Bavarian Illuminati, which is just not true.
Hmm.
It's weird.
And I was very surprised because it's the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States. It has nothing to do with the Bavarian Illuminati, but it is labeled like it is, and it is $400.
Oh,
That sounds like a money
man, that's a
grab.
lot of money for some misinformation.
Right? So, because I was like, oh, Getty Images, like what? I thought it would be credible because of how famous and well known and how many
Mhm.
Getty Images are used. And then to
Yeah.
that information to just be dead wrong was
Yeah.
very interesting. So think about that. And then, like I already kind of mentioned, to keep member identities secret, they had pseudonyms and they would also correspond in cipher. And so the specific cipher that they used consisted of numbers corresponding to letters. So A was equal to 12, and then it counted down to is equal to 1. And then at N, it was 13, and it would count up to 24.
Okay.
I don't know why, but that's what they chose. And then once you were admitted into a higher degree, they switched to a different code that resembled more hieroglyphic kind of symbols. And supposedly they never wrote out the word order and would just write a circle with a dot in the middle, but that looks exactly like the symbol they have for the letter S. So I don't really know if that ever got confusing or if they
Mm.
had a different symbol or something. I don't really know, but I thought that was kind of weird. And I'll have pictures on our website and on our videos of the ciphers and the alphabet numbers and stuff because that is a little confusing to visualize. And so, supposedly, within 2 years of forming the order, all but two of the professorial chairs at the University of Ingolstadt were held by members of the order. However, it wasn't until 1782 that the order had really began to grow in power and influence outside of Bavaria. So that summer, the Duke of Brunswick held a congress in Wilhelmsbad for the Freemasons. Yeah, so apparently the Freemasons throughout Europe and America and Asia were all like beefing. So to make them happy or whatever, he's like, we're just all gonna come to Bavaria, Germany. We're gonna get together. We're gonna just like air out our issues, fix it, blah, 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 whatever. So that was kind of the reason for this Congress. So Weishaupt's number two, Adolf von Knigge, who was also a Mason, went to the Congress and convinced a bunch of them to join the order. He was, I believe he was a Mason first and then joined the Illuminati. The timeline of this whole thing, I do not understand. But either way, he was able to convince the Duke Ferdinand of Brunswick and Prince Karl of Hesse to join. And it was estimated that after this, I believe, that there were at least 2,000 members of the order throughout Bavaria, France, Hungary, Italy, and Poland, among many other places. So after this summer, they had a huge reach of people. And quite a few of them were ministers, doctors, lawyers, and even a few princes. However, none were members of the lower working class. So Adam preyed on, I don't know if prey is the right word, but like wanted elite members.
Yeah. High class
And that's
society.
where I believe today's conspiracy of the Illuminati being an elitist organization comes into play. Now, pause for some more conspiracy. The French Revolution is supposedly connected to the Illuminati because when the French Count Honor Gabriel Mirabeau was in Germany, he was also brought into the order. I don't know if he was there for the Freemason conference or not, but he was there. He brought Weishaupt's idea back to France and was able to recruit many important people and soon to be leaders of the French Revolution, one of whom was the Duke of Orleans. And so this Duke was the leader of the Grand Orient Lodge in Paris, and supposedly through this lodge and this Duke, the Illuminati were able to create and control the Jacobin clubhouses within Paris. And so this is a huge conspiracy about the Illuminati, which is very interesting because as I was reading one source that I'd really hoped was fairly trustworthy, they presented this information as fact. They were like, this happened. And it wasn't until I had read another source that I realized this was actually one of the first major conspiracies around the Illuminati, which then made me question every single thing I've researched on this topic.
Was that when you messaged us and you were like, I don't know how this is going to go fact-wise, but
Yeah, I think so.
We'll
I was
see.
so frustrated. And so, like, that being said, I have no doubt that the Illuminati did make it to France, and there's a good chance they were in the Jacobin clubhouses, but I do strongly question their involvement causing the revolution.
Yeah.
I think it's the whole correlation versus causation argument.
Yeah.
Whatever. But this brings us to the downfall of the Bavarian Illuminati. So, apparently, correspondence was found when a courier traveling from Frankfurt to Paris in 1785 had been killed by a bolt of lightning. I like to think of that as divine
That really
intervention.
sucks. What are the odds?
Right? I don't know how true that is. It feels very lucky. Or unlucky, I guess. But
Yeah. It also feels like he probably died of something else and someone was like, oh, bolt of lightning. That is how
exactly.
he died, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't really know.
Yeah, and I don't know like how often people were getting struck by lightning back in the day, but whatever.
Yeah.
They also found incriminating papers on his body that talked about the order, and specifically Xavier's Whack, who was a lawyer that was part of the order. So they then searched this Xavier's house, and they found his collection of original writings and correspondence from Weishaupt. And I don't really know if the cipher was included on this guy's body or in Zwack's house, so I don't really know how they figured out what these papers said if they were supposedly written in code.
They probably had some like code breaker or someone trying to determine or decipher it.
Yeah.
Unless they were already looking into the Illuminati at this point, though, or the group, and they already had pre-existing information that they could kind of refer to, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure. But it's from these writings and correspondences that we know most of this information about their inner workings and belief systems. I wasn't able to find them, but I would love to read them and just kind of like verify for myself what was included in them.
Yeah.
They also searched the house of Baron Bassus, who was a high ranking member of the order, and found an even bigger collection of correspondence and letters and stuff. So they had quite a bit of just like evidence.
It's fascinating to me, though, despite it supposedly being such a secret organization, that so much physical evidence was left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you would
You would
think
think it would
they'd
be like,
burn the correspondences or, like, destroy them
yeah.
somehow, or I don't know.
Yeah, I almost wonder if they thought because they were written in code that they were
That'd be
safe.
fine, yeah.
But they're supposedly all highly intellectual people,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Who's to
yeah,
say that someone on the outside wouldn't be able to just crack it? Because it does
exactly.
seem there is a system to it all, so that system could be deciphered by an
Exactly.
outside person.
Yeah. And they kind of followed like the
Hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 24 alphanumeric code.
Yeah. They
Um,
thought splitting it up midway would be the be all to confuse everyone else in the world.
exactly. I really don't know that it would take me that long to figure it out, but
Yeah.
that's me never having to decipher anything.
Yeah.
So it was after this finding that the elector banned all secret societies, including the Illuminati. That is very important because not a lot of sources say that. They like to
I'm
say that
also
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say I'm curious how you ban a secret society.
I was thinking the exact thing.
Yeah,
They're probably just like, okay. They find another basement to go meet in. Like,
Yeah, right?
right? Yeah. I don't really
hmm.
know, but they banned like all like secret societies, so like Freemasons, Illuminati, like quote unquote secret societies.
Yeah.
On March 2nd, 1785, 9 years after they had been founded. So this has a very short lifespan. Like they were only active from 1776 to 1785.
Wow.
And apparently the elector published the correspondence and the documents that they found before issuing this ban. So
Oh,
like they found them before, they issued them 2 years after the
Right.
ban.
okay.
I'm not sure why, but whatever. From these writings that he published, two books were written. I'm sure there was more, but I'm only going to talk about these two, which basically blamed the revolution on, like the French Revolution, on the Illuminati and
Mm.
said that, quote, its members had a complex global plan to subvert the church, state, and society. By infiltrating Masonic lodges and other institutions, they had supposedly made their way deep into the French elite and, in the guise of Jacobins, overthrow the monarchy, end quote.
Hmm.
So, literally, the conspiracies about the Illuminati started in 1789, like when these books were
Wow.
published.
Wow.
Okay.
And so the
Dang, that
titles
is
of
a
these books,
long time of conspiracy.
yeah,
Mhm.
and
Wow.
it's just crazy. And so the titles of these books are actually kind of funny. So the first one is titled Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe, carried on in the secret meetings of Freemasons, Illuminati, and reading societies by John Robison.
That is a mouthful of a title. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
Yeah,
they just call it proofs of a conspiracy.
Yeah.
that's fair.
Yeah. And the second one was Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism. I know I'm saying that wrong, but I can't figure out how to
Ja-
say it right.
Jacobinism? I know that word, but you're
Because
like
it's,
now I also don't remember how it's said.
yeah, I don't know. But that one was written by Abbe Augustine Barruel. And yeah, they just spread false things. And they were super popular, and they started so many of the conspiracies that the Illuminati were behind so many influential events. Like it just, if a source quotes them as fact, that source is wrong.
Yeah.
I will
Okay.
just say that. But yeah, so the Bavarian Illuminati was disbanded around 1785. According to some sources, some members went to prison, some were banished, and some fled. Weishaupt either fled or was banished, depending on the source. And there are many theories that he just started up the same group under a new name and is still operating today. Also, not true. It is his Illuminati that is one of the ancestors for the Illuminati that we think of today because no one truly believes that they were ever disbanded.
Hmm.
And like I said earlier, if you want to learn more, Weishaupt's teachings can be found in the archives in Ingolstadt. You can go on an Illuminati themed walking tour where they actually tell you the truth of the group and not conspiracies, which I think is really neat. And you
Yeah,
can actually go to like the original meeting place of the Order of the Illuminati in Ingolstadt, which is so cool.
that is pretty cool.
Yeah. What
That's
were you going to say,
neat.
Nicole?
I don't know. It's probably gonna make me sound crazy. Um, but the group teaching the truth of the Illuminati, would they not? What if they're just spreading disinformation? Not that saying that they are, but like, how do we know what they're spreading is truth then? If they're almost gatekeeping the information that no one else has access to.
Yeah, fair. I don't know. I think it's just like this one person who's done a ton of research on the actual material
Right.
written by the Illuminati, and then he is sharing that with this group. But I
Right.
feel like if he was to post it on the internet, no one would believe him.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's my understanding, but I totally get where you're coming from, and I don't know. I wish they would tell more about this, but it becomes so oversaturated by conspiracy that it's so hard.
Yeah.
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 That's fair.
And then if I feel like it's almost like a confirmation bias where if they're not telling you what you think you know about the Illuminati, you automatically don't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it's not being believed as the truth.
Hmm.
And so apparently this is not where our story ends.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, I found this article by accident. Don't know how true it is, whatever. But it is a BBC article written in 2020. And it says that modern day Illuminati was started in the 1960s when a book called Principia Discordia was published. And so this book was described as the parody text for a parody faith called Discordianism. And so this faith worshipped Eris, the god of chaos, and their movement was to cause civil disobedience, practical jokes, and hoaxes.
That's fun.
And so, yeah, it's very weird. And so this
Yeah.
book never really amounted to anything. I think it was like 50 pages. But a writer named Robert Anton Wilson acted on one of its ideologies. And so this ideology was that, quote, miscreant activities could bring about social changes and force individuals to question parameters of reality, end quote. And so Wilson and one of the authors of Principia Discordia felt that the world was becoming, quote, too authoritarian, too tight, too close, too controlled, end quote. And they wanted to bring chaos back into society to really shake things up.
Oh,
And they
okay.
decided that the best way to do that was to spread disinformation, specifically about the Illuminati. So
That's so dumb.
I
Okay.
know.
That's so dumb.
It makes me furious if I think about it for too
Yeah.
long. So they
Oh,
sent
God.
fake letters to the magazine that Wilson worked for at the time, which was Playboy, about this secret elite organization called the Illuminati.
Why?
Why play? Like, okay.
That's
Okay.
a great question,
Oh,
honestly.
man.
Like, I read Playboys for the articles or whatever. Like,
I read it
I
for the
don't-
substance, okay?
exactly. They talk about the Illuminati. The spreadfold is just a giant eye. So they would also send letters that would then contradict the ones that they had sent. And so they had hoped that their idea, like, that they would have enough contrary points of view of something to cause people to question the information they were being given. So not only did they start with false information, they are now contradicting that false information with other false information, I'm assuming.
My God.
And it's so frustrating given the fact that we are just so overwhelmed with misinformation and disinformation right now that I'm like, you chose to what?
Yeah.
This
And I can
article was
imagine,
also
like,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I can imagine, like, them doing that in, like, I think you said the 60s or so.
Mhm.
Definitely relates to the reason it's so hard to research the Illuminati today.
Yeah, 100%. And I also like my inner conspiracy theorist came out a little bit when I was reading this article because it was written in 2020, right when like disinformation became like so prominent that I'm like, it feels
Yeah.
very convenient that you're writing this
Yeah.
article about this during this time,
Yeah.
which then like this whole research process just made me question finding sources and what sources are true.
Mhm.
And my brain is mush.
Fair.
The article did say that their idea didn't really work the way they wanted it to, but it didn't elaborate other than to say that the chaos traveled far and wide, which we see. Of course, it also really didn't help that Wilson and another of his friends wrote the Illuminatus trilogy, which suggested that the Illuminati covered up things like the JFK assassination. And so this book was a work of science fiction, but it did include certain ideas of the Discordian religion, and I'm sure it influenced the idea of the Illuminati that we see today, even though it is like fake. But it reminds me of a quote that I saw when I was researching for this episode that goes, "The modern concept of the Illuminati being some kind of evil secret government comes mostly from books and movies and video games," which I think is a fairly accurate statement because books such as Memoirs, Proofs of a Conspiracy, and the Illuminatus trilogy have contributed greatly to our current view of what the Illuminati is, even though there is no concrete proof of its existence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so apparently there's a lot of present day fraternal orders that use the name Illuminati to attract members but have no connection to this Bavarian Illuminati or enough power to be capable of the things that the Illuminati is quote unquote credited with. And that was actually very interesting because I was talking with my boyfriend's dad about this, and he searched up the Illuminati, and the first thing that showed up was like theilluminati.com. Like, and then it was like, join today, become a member, blah, blah, blah. I didn't come across that website once when I was doing my research. And I thought it was very interesting how different our search results were.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I wanted to find that website and be like, obviously it's fake and this isn't the real Illuminati. Because I was talking to him about how hard it is to join this secret society. And he's like, no, it's not really that hard. See, join today. And I was like, oh.
Oh, it's
Okay.
Illuminati.am.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't even show up for me either. Why is it though that my first 3 searches for the Illuminati are an Asian Wikipedia source,
Okay,
Yeah,
I got
same.
that too.
Britannica, and then Marvel.com, Illuminati members, enemies, powers.
Oh.
Now I'm going to address some common misconceptions and conspiracies around the Illuminati. I don't address them all because some of them scare me, but these are just so one of the articles I read referred to the Illuminati conspiracy as a super conspiracy, which is just a conspiracy that controls a bunch of smaller conspiracies, which I would say is a very accurate description because without this one conspiracy of the Order of the Illuminati, we wouldn't have so many of the other little ones like JFK assassination, 9/11, the French Revolution, like so many things like that.
That's true.
And so a New Age guru, David Icke, believes that the Illuminati are shape-shifting reptilian humanoids from the star system Draco. So he believes that a genetically modified human archon hybrid race of reptilian shapeshifters who manipulate events to keep humans in fear so that the archons can feed off of the resulting negative energy. And the only way to defeat them is for people to wake up to the truth and fill their hearts with love.
Where do people get these ideas?
He visited a psychic, and the psychic told him that he was going to be like a messenger of these certain things, and so he believes himself to be the son of a godhead, whatever that means.
Yep.
But he was like a famous like football player and coach and like regular
The
person.
name does ring a bell.
Yeah.
David Icke or Ike.
However, he's been banned from entering several countries because of his beliefs.
That's hilarious. I love that. Good for those countries.
I know.
If you look him up, you will recognize his face.
Yeah,
oh, really?
I do.
I'd never heard of him before.
He was a former footballer and sports broadcaster, but now is an English conspiracy theorist, author, who has written over 20 books. Yeah. He looked. How do you even start to believe in these things? Like, I want to know that.
So he like spreads very much anti-Semitic hate. Yep. He's a Holocaust denier.
Oh my god.
Just a all-around stand-up citizen.
Yeah.
I am scared to talk too much shit about him in case he finds this episode.
he believes in reptilian humanoids. He can't be that truly dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the conspiracies relate back to the Freemasons as well. And so it's kind of my opinion that if we removed the link between the Illuminati and the Masons, most of the explanations for conspiracies would just disappear because it
Mhm.
feels like a lot of the people who are thought of to cause this conspiracy are a Freemason. And so then they're like,
Oh.
oh, they're automatically Illuminati.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
so if you just kind of just what they're a Freemason, period, end of story,
Yeah.
no more Illuminati.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But it's hard to do that.
Could they be the same? Is there like talk about them being technically the same or like an emergence of one and the other? And that's why they're so.
I think the belief is that the Freemasons are like an arm of the Illuminati.
Could the
Hmm.
Freemasons be the Western arm and the Illuminati is the Eastern arm of just the same
I
ideologies?
don't I don't think so cuz Freemasons are global.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
they're
because we went over
everywhere.
that in our Freemason episode. They started in I think the UK, but they
Oh,
they ended up expanding and like there's different types of Freemasonry, so they don't all agree with each other, but it's an international organization. But
Yeah.
I can totally see why, like, how someone could come to the conclusion that the Freemasons are like a branch of the Illuminati. Just, I mean, because of like the belief that they're so ominous. They've been around
Yeah.
forever.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's just wild. But this is interesting. So I was kind of like, why is there Illuminati symbols on the US $1 bill? Like, why is it so ingrained that US conspiracy is Illuminati? So I did some
Hmm.
Googling. And the Eye of Providence, or the all seeing eye, was intended to represent Providence as the eye that watches over the workers of mankind. And so it was added to the reverse side of the Great Seal of the US in 1782. So after the Illuminati was formed. However, it
Okay.
was proposed in 1776. And so you might think, oh, that's the same year that the Illuminati was formed, but it's also the same year that the United States as a country was formed.
Mm.
Uh,
So,
uh,
yeah. And the Illuminati was formed in Germany. This is happening in America.
Hmm.
yeah.
It was also a conventional symbol for God's benevolent oversight. So, just saying, like, God's always watching.
Yeah.
So, this designer, Pierre Eugene du Cimetière, originally designed this eye over a shield composed of 13 shields, each representing the original 13 states of the Union. And so
Hmm.
now it sits over a 13 level unfinished pyramid, which represents the United States' potential for growth,
Oh,
That's
not
fun.
the Illuminati.
yeah.
And the Latin words annuet coeptis above translate into he favors our undertakings. So he being providence or God. It's not really
Hmm.
specified, it's just kind of inferred
Yeah.
because annuo, the Latin word annuo means I approve or I favor, and coeptum means commencement or undertaking.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And so this eye appears in many other countries, and it is often associated with Freemasonry, which doesn't really help the accusations of it being an Illuminati symbol,
Hmm.
um, because a lot of conspiracy theorists subscribe to the belief that the eye on the $1 bill is a nod to the Masons founding the USA.
Ah.
However, this eye was apparently not seen in Masonry until 14 years after the creation of the Great Seal.
Huh.
And so a lot of people argue that with like, well, Benjamin Franklin was a Mason and he was part of the design committee, but none of his designs were approved and they didn't include the eye. So
Fair.
another just unnecessary link between the Masons and the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Do with that what you will. This Eye of Providence is also seen in many religions and religious cathedrals, temples, logos, etc., and often with a triangle, which people believe Illuminati. However, the triangle is indicative of the Holy Trinity when used in a religious context, so it has nothing to do with the Illuminati. And another thing that people think was influenced by the Illuminati was the Latin underneath the pyramid, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which translates to a new order of the ages. And so Charles Thomson, who coined annuit coeptis and this Latin phrase, derived it from the fourth poem of the Eclogues by Virgil, and it is used to signify the beginning of the new American era, because when they came up with this Great Seal, America was just, becoming a country. It's not talking about this new world order of a secret government underlying everything, trying to control everyone. It's just saying that America's a new country. It's a new world now.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to put it back into the context of when it was
that time.
invented
Yeah.
for it to make sense. And that brings me into the New World Order. This is the idea that there is a secret totalitarian government that is conspiring to rule the world under one government. So many influential figures, both historical and current, have been thought to be part of this organization, and many major events and crises are attributed to the New World Order. And they, like I had said, the Novus Ordo Seclorum on the Great Seal is often proof, quote unquote, of this because it says New Order. And so they believe that we will be implanted with microchips as a way to enslave citizens. They believe that the UN is a vehicle for this New World Order to operate through. And a lot of New World Order conspiracies overlap with the Illuminati because it is thought that the Illuminati is the group of elites who are behind the implementation of the New World Order.
Huh.
The New World Order is heavily anti-Semitic, which in and of itself is super problematic. It draws on the claims that Jewish people control major financial and media institutions and thus control America. There's a lot of Holocaust denial among people who believe in the New World Order. And there's a text titled The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, which allegedly sets out plans for Jewish world domination and is often cited among New World Order believers, even though it has been repeatedly discredited as a fabrication and a forgery. Overall, it is very, very harmful and hateful towards Jewish people.
Sorry, go ahead, Rebecca.
Sorry, I was gonna say, when I got my first tattoo, like the paw print on my wrist, I only realized after being tattooed for about 10 minutes out of an hour or so that he was heavily anti-Semitic and had so many New World conspiracy theories about that in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a needle in my wrist and I didn't feel comfortable saying anything. So I was just like, oh, I want to leave, please.
Yeah.
It was, needless to say, I'll never go back there. I'm calling him out because he's anti-Semitic as hell. Kyle at Sin on Skin in Halifax, don't go. Anti-Semitic as fuck.
Hell, Kyle.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Really good at tattooing. Really shit person.
That's wild. Yeah, I can't wrap my head around that. Like, how do you, one, deny the Holocaust ever existed?
Mm-hmm.
Are you unwell? Yes, okay. But, like, what? It's so hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
There was a community close to where I grew up where there was a teacher who actively taught that the Holocaust wasn't real.
Oh, that's not good. That's
for
dangerous.
like a while.
That's horrible. That is dangerous. Absolutely.
It is so dangerous.
Not getting into politics, but I mean, just look at what's happening right now to the south of us.
Yeah.
Glad to be Canadian.
See how long
it is a very scary time to be researching the Illuminati and the New World Order.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair.
It also just makes me really sad because, like, who cares that a Jewish person controls the banks?
That's what I was thinking too. Like when what was it that Jewish people control major financial and media institutions. Okay, good for them.
Okay, what if it was a Catholic person? What would the difference be?
Why is it so bad that the Jewish populace?
It literally doesn't make sense. Like, why have Jewish people been prosecuted literally since the beginning of time? It's just
literally.
I don't know. It's just weird. There's a lot of semantics that is whack. Is whack. Yeah. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
Yeah. It makes me sad.
Yeah, me too.
I also just want to there's a text out there that talks about the 13 families of the Illuminati. And this spreads more anti-Semitic hate and talks about how this certain family, the Rothschilds, control everything. And they're this Jewish family that supposedly started up this one bank and I think just made very smart financial decisions and now just control this huge bank.
Yeah.
Please
Wow, they
stop
were
spreading
successful
hate about
businessmen.
them.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
literally. Like, I'm sorry you're mad they made smart decisions. Like, I don't know what you want from me. So if you see something that talks about the Rothschilds and that conspiracy, just understand that it is a conspiracy and is spreading harmful information. So just think about what you're reading and what you're sharing.
Yeah.
That being said, beware of subliminal messaging because there is a belief that the Illuminati is putting subliminal messages in the media. However,
Mm-mm.
I couldn't find a single source that talked about it rationally, so I'm just going to move on.
Yep.
Fair.
Okay.
Fair.
Because you can't Google subliminal messaging and the Illuminati and get a single reasonable
Yeah.
source.
People are going to find what they want to hear in anything that they see if they look hard
Exactly.
enough.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's the same thing
Exactly.
to me. This is so similar to like the Satanic Panic when they were saying like, "Oh my God, they're they're backmasking, they're putting satanic messages if you reverse the song." Like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, no, the fuck, they're not.
yeah.
There
Exactly.
was some
And I
artist
feel
that
like
ended up started to do it on purpose just to like mess with people. Like,
that's funny. Yeah, and I feel like I didn't really get into the whole like Illuminati and Satanism because the Illuminati doesn't exist today as we think that it does.
yeah,
Um and so I didn't even bother suggesting that, but there were a couple sources where it did kind of talk about like, oh, the satanic panic and the satanic children rituals are proof of the Illuminati. And I'm like, wait, well, we already debunked that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
So that in itself is just false.
Void. Yeah.
However, if you want to read a good book about the Illuminati, just in and of itself, a conspiracy, nothing about the Illuminati in that book is true. It is so interesting and good. Read Dan Brown's book, Angels and Demons. He wrote also the Da Vinci Code, which I think I haven't read it yet, but I'm really excited about it. It is very good, but it does, I think, add a bit to how we view the Illuminati because I think that people go into it with the same kind of idea that I went into it before I'd researched the Illuminati of this guy's done his research. What he's saying is probably true.
yeah.
Is not.
Yeah. Keeping in mind it's fiction. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read
Um,
Angels and Demons, but I have read the Da Vinci Code when I was like in grade 9 or so. And yeah, I will say at that time I was like, man, he really knows what he's talking about.
yeah.
It's
I
a
think
great
I
book
was
though.
just it is very good. I was really excited because I was like, this is gonna make research so easy if he's already done it all and I can just kind of like cite him as a source. And then I was
Yeah.
like, no,
No.
not at all. But it is really good. And I think it's important to remember that it is like a work of fiction. And though he
Mhm.
presents a lot of the history as fact, and it highlights how easy it was to believe something that it just wasn't true. And I think it kind of is a modern day example of what happened with Proofs of a Conspiracy and Memoirs and the Illuminatus trilogy.
Yeah.
So just kind of, this is going to sound so conspiracy theorist, but do your own research.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Check your biases. Make sure.
legitimately
Yeah.
do your own research with real sources.
Exactly. And check your sources. Like, check the authors, check the time it was written, what's going on around the world. Like, really, it's exhausting and it melts your brain, but I believe that it is worth it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That's all I have on the Illuminati.
That's all. You've had so much
That's
to talk
all I
about.
have. It was so hard to research. I don't know how much of that is true. I know a bunch of people are going to be mad about certain things that I say. Sorry.
It happens.
Not
Like,
Can't please
sorry.
everyone.
We can't. It's a conspiracy theory. We all are going to have different opinions on it.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. I hope that listening to this, you kind of learn to check your biases and think about what it is you're sharing and thinking and reading so that we can stop spreading hate
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
way.
Especially in terms of
Mhm.
like sharing it with other people too. Like if you believe it's
Yeah.
one thing, like do some research before you instantly press send, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with believing in a conspiracy theory as
Yeah.
long as it's not a hateful conspiracy theory that is
Or harm.
actively
Yeah.
doing harm against people.
Yeah.
There's also no harm in believing in one, but then getting new information and changing your mind.
Exactly.
That's so important. Just
It
Yeah.
is.
you're allowed to grow. Don't get stuck in like your stubborn ways. Just keep
Exactly.
learning.
It
Yeah.
doesn't make you less of a person to accept and adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have new information to base your opinion off of. So,
Exactly. So
yeah.
just do some introspection after this episode a little bit
Yeah.
and discover what Illuminati means to you.
Yeah.
It's like an MLM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that's all I have.
Well, thank you. I feel like I learned so much, and I say this every episode, but I think that's one of the great things I enjoy about how we do our episodes is like two of us are going in blind for the most part. And so like we're listening and learning for the same time at the same time as like our listeners are as well, which is pretty fun.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think we should read the Da Vinci Code next because I have a copy of it. So
I haven't read it in a long time. It's a great book, and I still have it downstairs. So
I've seen the movie and I loved the movie, and I always know the book's different than the movie and all of that jazz, but it'd be interesting to see the more like behind the scenes theory and stuff that supports what we had seen in the movie.
yeah.
Mhm.
This was a longer episode. This was a good chunk of discussion. I was happy with that.
Mhm. I know. I was happy too because I was like, a lot of this stuff needs to be discussed to be properly
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely,
100%.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our next topic or next episode that we're going to be covering is on the murder of Kimberly Proctor. This one is a Canadian case out in BC. So I'm not excited, but like looking forward to sharing the story with you guys and having those conversations. But if you want to find more of us, you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok at What the Forensics. Our website is whattheforensics.ca. This is where, like, when Journey had mentioned that she'll post pictures and whatnot, we post our sources, we post some photos, some updates every now and then. Just kind of an easy place to find what you're looking for. And you can email us at whattheforensics@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns, conspiracy theories you want to share, any other anything, I guess. But that being said, this has been another episode of What the Forensics. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you learned some stuff, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Just a reminder to everyone that we are not professionals in the forensic science field. We are just interested in forensics and want to share what we are learning with our listeners. We're trying to give you the most accurate information, but we are human and can make mistakes. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next week.